What's going on? Welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. We're out here on Monday, September 12th in the evening, just a few hours before Monday Night Football. So unfortunately, you won't be getting this until Tuesday, but needed to make that disclaimer before starting the episode. Lucas Wentzel here, joined by my esteemed colleagues, Cameron Lawrence and Tyler Plath. Make sure to follow us on the socials. Hold the applause. We're not that big of a deal. But if you want to make us a big deal, FFL is on Twitter, the FFL is on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm at Lucas Wentzel on Twitter, Tyler_Plath for Tyler, and Camlaw317 over on Twitter. And hey, you know what? One last plug here. If you want to join our group chat, our community of Fantasy Football League winners, head on over to our Chalkboard that is in the description of this YouTube video or the audio podcast that you are listening to. We got week 1 in the books. Week 1 of NFL action, at least by the time the listeners get this right. We still have one more game tonight. We have the Broncos Seahawks tonight, but we've got a full show recapping Sunday's action. But before we dive into that, I want to start a new segment called Overreaction Monday. We're recording this on Monday, so we can call it Overreaction Monday, okay? Really, it's Overreaction Tuesday for you, but we're going to start a new segment, Overreaction Monday/Tuesday. You insert whatever day you want in there. We're going to give you some of the biggest overreactions we have seen from this week of action. We're going to do this every single week. This is how we're going to start every single week. So, fellas, what is the biggest overreaction you have seen that fantasy managers need to, in the words of Aaron Rodgers, RELAX, relax about? What overreactions do we need to relax on?
Mine is that psychedelics won Aaron Rodgers 2 MVPs in a row. I'm just kidding. I hope you did have to watch that interview on Fox.
That was brutal.
Mine is that fantasy managers are asking us if they should be trading Dalvin Cook to get A.J. Dillon. Do not trade away Dalvin Cook this week. Do not try and get A.J. Dillon for Dalvin Cook. Do not do that.
That was crazy that you went live, and that was such a gut, immediate, oh my gosh, A.J. Dillon has 12 fantasy points and Dalvin only has 4. I was should I trade him?
I could not believe it.
So let's see, Lucas. This player was a flag plan of yours, was it not?
I stepped away when you picked yours, so I'm going to say yes and hope you're correct.
It's one of 3 players, right?
Right, and I think I know which one you're going with.
Do you want to take a stab?
Is it Allen Robinson?
No.
Oh, you did go Trey Lance. All right.
I did go Trey Lance, and I need to tell the people that Trey Lance is a bust and that you need to sell him right now. That's my overreaction. RELAX. The man literally played in tropical storm, hurricane type conditions. First NFL game in a fairly hostile environment, right, in Chicago, right? Just pump the brakes. No more Elijah Mitchell now for 2 weeks because he sprained his MCL.
2 months.
So the rushing opportunities will be there. Or 2 months, sorry. Yeah, 2 months. So the rushing opportunities will be there now. You're going back to San Francisco sooner rather than later, right? You're playing in California. You're not going to be playing in a Chicago rainstorm every week. Relax. He will be just fine.
Don't let Jason Garrett lead your charge. Did you see, Tyler, you and I were watching that on Sunday. If you have Jimmy Garoppolo on this team, and you're 31, I don't even remember what the record was, 31-12 or something like that.
31-14 with Garoppolo, and then something atrocious without.
Yeah. And don't let Jason Garrett lead the charge for you.
There's a reason he's announcing and not coaching right now.
Don't let Jason Garrett lead that charge. Trey Lance will be just fine. I 100% agree. My overreaction comes from a more positive perspective. Michael Thomas, baby. He's going to get featured on this week's episode as an honorable mention. He's back, baby. Michael Thomas is back. I'm saying pump the brakes on that. I don't know if he's actually back. Jarvis Landry was the most productive Saints wide receiver this week. Jameis actually spread the sugar out quite a bit. I was honestly surprised. I thought it'd be pretty much Alvin Kamara. I mean, I expected Michael Thomas to get some work, but even so, he was on limited snap count this week. He caught 2 touchdowns, okay? Without those 2 touchdowns, fairly pedestrian day for Michael Thomas. I'm not saying take away when a player does great, but what I'm also saying is if you think you have a top 10 wide receiver in Michael Thomas again, I'm saying you don't. Because I don't think we can count on double touchdown production from 10 touchdowns from Michael Thomas last week. I'm just saying, I don't think you can count on a touchdown from Michael Thomas at that consistency, and especially against AJ Terrell. Yes. I like, those are some nice routes, and AJ Terrell played some darn good defense on those routes. Jameis had a nice day. Michael Thomas had a nice day. I don't think you have a top 10 wide receiver in Michael Thomas. I don't think he's officially 100% back yet. I think once you start to get some Chris Olave in there, his numbers are going to start coming back down. So I'm saying pump the brakes on thinking you have a top 10 wide receiver in Michael Thomas again, because I don't think you do yet. I need more than just this 1 week of 2 touchdowns for 22 fantasy points from Michael Thomas.
100%.
All right. Got those out of the way. There are plenty more, right? Austin Eckler, don't overreact. Aaron Jones is a conversation. But let's dive into some news from Sunday instead of continuously overreacting, because there is no need for that. Big piece of news. I mean, there's a lot of injury news here, fellas. Unfortunately, we're going to have to cruise through all this. Dak Prescott going to miss 6 to 8 weeks after having surgery on his right thumb today. Just what I needed for my dynasty leagues. I am depressed. Well, just not good news. This is very similar, I read, to like the Russell Wilson injury from last year. And so after seeing Russell Wilson come back in 4 weeks last year and how his production decreased, if I'm the Cowboys, I'm letting Dak sit as long as he needs to.
Yeah.
There's no need to rush him back. I mean, you saw, I think, and the only reason why, like you said, is because we saw what happened with Russ last year, because Russ rushed back.
Yep.
And it took him a couple of games to get going. Give him the time that he needs. Trust your roster. Go trade for Jimmy Garoppolo.
That was going to be my follow-up, is reckless speculation. What are the odds that Cowboys go out and get Jimmy Garoppolo now? Not that Cooper Rush. I'm sure they like Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush wasn't... Hey, he could have been a lot worse against the Vikings last year. Granted, that Vikings defense just decided they didn't want to play on Halloween. But point being, reckless speculation. Give me a percentage. That's all you need to say. Percentage that they go out and get Jimmy Garoppolo.
40%, because I don't think that the 49ers actually want to give Jimmy G to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I give it like 30% even. Like,
yeah,
it's just not a Jerry Jones type move, I don't think.
No, 100%. I agree. I'm saying now like 20%. I think it'd probably be a wise thing to do, but at the same time, like Jimmy just got a contract, right? Like, let's not pretend he doesn't, like, he's not an expense at the same time then too. Mm-hmm. So I think you just sit on Cooper Rush, you let him do his thing for a few weeks, and you hope Dak comes back 100% and can help, elevate this team second half of the season to make a playoff push. Chris Godwin, same game, suffered a hamstring strain. Could be sidelined for a few weeks. I took that note down a few hours ago if we had any updates on him since. And we're talking, we are 4:45 Central Time right now.
I haven't heard anything about him since.
I haven't either.
Well, actually,
go ahead.
Todd Bowles said that the injury really isn't as bad as they thought it was going to be. Good. So his availability kind of depends on treatment throughout the weeks and stuff. So you could say he's kind of day to day, week to week, that awkward in between.
Dude, if I'm the Buccaneers, I'm sitting him for 4 weeks. Why are
I don't
you
know
like
why they had him play.
Right, ACL, hamstring injury. Like, there is no need to have Chris Godwin out on the field right now. So, I mean, we could see Chris Godwin in 2 weeks. We could see him in 4 or 5 weeks, depending on how long they want to sit him. So we'll pay attention to that. We should get more updates here as the week goes on. Elijah Mitchell, this is a big one, will miss 2 months with a sprained MCL. And this is like deja vu for like the 20th time in the San Francisco backfield. It was like, not that I ever want to predict injuries, but if there was one I would have chosen to predict, if you would have like forced me to be a Swami on NFL injuries, I would have said Elijah Mitchell gets injured week 1. And what do we know now? He's missing 2 months.
Yeah, it's crazy.
do you think steps up in the meantime? Just give me a name.
I feel like it has to be Jeff Wilson. I mean,
I agree.
Tyrion Davis-Price was a healthy scratch. So I have no idea what's going on in San Francisco with the running backs. I don't want to try to predict that.
I say Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I was going to say Deebo is the correct answer. If you're forcing me to choose a player, I will choose Deebo. If you're forcing me to choose a running back, I will say Jeff Wilson. This was the reason I wanted to stay away from Elijah Mitchell, because I wasn't going to get enough return on him for the unpredictability. And granted, like, I'm not saying, like, you can say, like, oh, it was an injury. It wasn't that he just got pulled. This is part of it. Okay, this is part. I just didn't want to touch him because something like this was bound to happen. Whether he got benched, whether Kyle Shanahan midseason decided he wanted to switch running backs. I didn't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole. I don't want to victory lap that, but also I'm kind of victory lapping that.
Do we want to continue to recklessly speculate and say that Kareem Hunt is going to end up with the Niners now?
Oh, please. Oh, I would love that. Kareem Hunt would be a top 10 running back if that happened.
Wow.
Do you know how good I would parade on my flag plant? I would parade so hard. So hard. Even he was we'll highlight him in this episode too, but
look, 2 months is going to be a long time. And
is there?
Again, reckless speculation.
I feel like we need to have reckless speculation like Tuesday. I feel like that's what the episode needs to be now instead.
If we're really going to recklessly speculate, are we saying then a Jimmy G Kareem Hunt trade's about to happen?
That's exactly what I was just going to ask. Is that what we're really going to
recklessly speculate right now?
This is not going to happen. It's reckless speculation.
Wait, what about Alexander Madison to the Niners too?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Oh.
For Deebo, straight up?
For Deebo. Oh.
Okay, so here's the question we'll ask. What are the odds the 49ers go out and get another running back? They go out and trade for another running back.
I would say pretty low. I don't see them doing it.
I think there'll be waivers before they do any trades.
Yeah. That's what I kind of think.
I bet they wish they held on to Trey Sermon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they must have really disliked that guy.
I don't understand that at all. Let's keep pumping through the. Go ahead, Todd.
Keep going. All
right,
we've done enough speculating. Keep it moving.
It's true. We've done enough reckless speculation. No more reckless speculation on this episode. Najee Harris re-aggravated his Lisfranc injury he sustained earlier this preseason. It was just a tweak of the Lisfranc, not a full-out sprain or anything like that. Just a tweak. But I found this really interesting. Per Dr. Jesse Morse of the Fantasy Doctors, friend of the podcast, this is a tweet he sent out earlier today after Ian Rappaport gave an update on both Najee and TJ Watt's injuries. This is in a tweet, quote tweeting Rap Sheet. Steelers would be silly to allow him to play over the next 2 to 3 weeks if they expect him to last all season. Even if mild, should rest. If he plays, he risks the full fracture. See Travis Etienne of last year. I think he nailed it. If you're the Steelers, there's no need to rush this guy back.
Yeah, without him, they have nothing. They're not going to score without him. Everything runs around him. So,
just as we're talking about Najee, Shefty just tweeted out a little Najee Harris update. Test today on Steelers running back Najee Harris's foot injury came back negative, and there is a belief that, according to a source, he should be good to go Sunday versus the Patriots.
If you're the Steelers, don't do it. Don't do it.
They will. He
wants it. He wants back in.
This isn't even fantasy football, right? This has nothing to do with fantasy football. This has to do with the wear and tear running backs are now facing in the NFL. Workhorse running backs are facing.
Especially Najee.
So, yeah, as you were giving that update, I got that update as well. So look at that breaking news on the pod. We love it. We love to see it. That's 2 episodes in a row for you, Ty.
I'm just saying it pays to just turn on the notifications on your Rap Sheets and Shefties.
I think Ty needs to dress up as Adam Schefter for Halloween. Anyways, Keenan Allen.
Give him 2 phones.
Keenan Allen left yesterday's game with a hamstring injury. It seems like everything that I have been reading makes it seem likely that he's going to miss Thursday Night Football versus the Chiefs. I mean, it's literally where you're asking the guy to turn around in 3 days and 4 days and play. I wouldn't expect Keenan Allen to go this week, but I haven't. Has there been any updates on him at this point too? Again, we're talking 450 on Monday. By the time you get this, there might be more updates.
Haven't seen anything, but as a 30-year-old wide receiver, you'd expect him to miss this next week.
I would agree. Patrick Mahomes also sustained a minor wrist injury this week. Really shouldn't be an issue going forward. Test came back negative. Patrick Mahomes basically said it's sore, but everything looked good on the x-ray. So I think you're going to be with Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to miss any time. And lastly, Mac Jones exited Sunday's game with a back injury. Likely just back spasms, though. Sounds like he will play in week 2. Actually, I stand corrected. Could play in week 2. Again, if I'm the Patriots, I'm certainly not rushing him back, but at the same time, I don't have very many better options on that team. So
no.
Let's dive in then to our week 1 recap. Now that we've recapped all the news from Sunday, let's recap week 1 with some boom players and some bust players. I'm going to highlight a couple players at each position who were standouts this week and a couple players who left quite a bit to be desired from this week. So because we're positive, because we just breathe positivity on this podcast, we're going to start with the week 1 booms, and we're going to start with running backs. And the man who I love so dearly, he just launched his way up on my jersey list. He jumped Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle has moved down. I know, that's a big deal. It's a big deal. He's still behind Gabe Davis, though. Not that any of the listeners care. I feel like we need to have like a weekly Lucas's jersey rankings of what jersey do I need to get next. I feel like I've brought this up and people are just like, what a stupid list. Anyways, Saquon Barkley finished as the overall running back 1 on the week as of Monday Night Football. 33.4 fantasy points. This could age poorly, and Javonte could put up 40 tonight. I'm not expecting that. But Saquon Barkley, before Monday Night Football, is a running back 1 on the week. 33.4 fantasy points, 18 carries, 164 yards, and a touchdown. 6 receptions, 30 yards, and a 2-point conversion as well. Is Saquon back? Can I say Saquon's back?
Saquon looked back. I mean, just not even looking at the box score, but actually watching him, he was hitting the holes hard, and he was making people miss. But that was the first time I've seen him look like rookie year Saquon since his rookie season. So it was good to see.
I also know that the Titans defense is kind of going through some change. I mean, Harold Landry is out for the year, and they've had some roster adjustments this offseason. So not to say that I don't think, like you said, Cam, he looked great. He looked really, really good. I got to see it against one more defense, though, to make sure that it is Saquon and not just a really good matchup for Saquon.
And who do the Giants have next week? Remind me.
That I'm looking up right now, and I want to say, it's Carolina. So we should expect pretty much the same because if Kareem Hunt can drop 25, Saquon can drop at least 40. So
that's such a gross matchup.
And Nick Chubb had 141 rushing yards this past week. So look, Cameron, I think you nailed it. Saquon just looked so good. He looked confident. He looked like he was running on that ankle and knee fully healthy. Right, we're now the year after the year. We're in the year after the ACL injury. Ankle injury was just freak last year. I loved how hard he was hitting the holes. That made me, as a Saquon Barkley manager in my dynasty leagues, I loved watching every single second of that. So yes, I am with you. I think we can expect big things from Saquon Barkley going forward, especially in a matchup against Carolina next week. Other running back that's worth highlighting, Jonathan Taylor finished as running back 2 overall on the week, but
to be expected.
To be expected, right? DeAndre Swift. Running back 3 on the week, 26.5 fantasy points against the Philadelphia Eagles, 15 carries, 155 yards and a tutty, and 3 receptions for 31 yards as well. All I'm going to say is that the DeAndre RB1 overall narrative is looking really good right now. That is not a week 1 victory lap. I just love DeAndre Swift.
I would agree. And the thing is, people are like, Jamal Williams is going to take away goal line carries. He did. He scored 2 touchdowns. Jamal Williams is going to take away short yardage. He did. But it didn't matter. DeAndre Swift still put up 26.5 fantasy points. He's going to put up points no matter what happens in the game. He is that Christian McCaffrey-esque where it doesn't have to be a touchdown. He can still score 24 points in a game.
And that's the thing. So I saw a lot of dialogue around DeAndre Swift. I mean, and you guys know what I'm talking about. There was a lot of dialogue around DeAndre Swift versus Aaron Jones and how they're in very similar situations. They both have very similar play styles. You have one who probably isn't going to see majority of the short yardage and goal line work. You have the backup who's going to see most of that work, but they're going to get most of the receiving work. They're in identical situations, to which I say, not really, because I think DeAndre Swift is the more explosive player than Aaron Jones. I love Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was one of my favorite picks this year. I think DeAndre Swift is the more explosive player. I mean, we saw it, 15 carries for 155 yards, 10 yards a carry, right? And Aaron Jones had that this week too, right? Like, that's not to take away from Aaron Jones. But Swift is going to get his, right? Like, yes, Jamal Williams is going to come in and take those touchdowns, but like, A.J. Dillon is the better running back than Jamal Williams. Like the gap between Swift and Williams, I think, is bigger than it is between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. So I mean, like, DeAndre Swift is just a smash play going forward. Like I don't think this is like going to be an anomaly. I think we'll get plenty more of these games from Swift in future weeks. Some honorable mentions that are going to be worth highlighting. I already brought up Jonathan Taylor. Kareem Hunt, running back 4 on the week, 23 fantasy points. Cordero Patterson, Kareem Hunt narrative looking really good as well. Cordero Patterson, 22.6 fantasy points. I mean, I want to pause. What do you make of that? Like, I feel like so many people were out on Cordero, and now we get a top 10 finish week 1. Like, Tyler Algier was a healthy scratch. Like, is it Cordero again? Like, it's just Cordero's the only guy.
So I'm not trading for Cordero, and I'm probably not going to trade away Cordero because I don't think people are going to give me what he could be worth, you know? So he's just a hold, I think, on all phases.
Right.
I just feel like we've been lied to this entire offseason because everything that we heard was Cordero is going to be lining up more for pass catching opportunities and stuff. And the man had 22 carries. That's not what the offseason agenda was. Somebody's lying. And whoever it is, the anonymous beat writer that's down in Atlanta needs to get the bin because he is garbage, okay? That is stupid. That could have helped people win weeks. Somebody like me, who is at the bottom of the league, could have really, really used a Cordero week. I'm off. I'm going to step off my soapbox. My rant is over.
No, we need more Ty soapboxes like that. That was phenomenal.
Clip it.
I mean, you're 100% right though, right? Like, this wasn't the narrative. The narrative wasn't Cordero Patterson 22 rushing attempts. Cordero Patterson wasn't bulk the carries. It was, this is a committee. Expect mainly Cordero, but then also expect Damian Williams and Tyler Algier to get their work in as well. And Tyler Algier didn't even play, right? Like, the narrative's off. Somebody lied, and it's the anonymous beat writer. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, hello, 2 receiving touchdowns on Lou to 22.4 fantasy points.
The Isaiah Pacheco fanboys are just in the mud at the moment.
Well, Isaiah Pacheco still had a rushing touchdown, 12 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown.
But those receiving touchdowns could have gone to Pacheco, and now they're going to CEH.
Well, but so then vice versa, right? Rushing touchdowns could have gone to CEH too, right? So I that's another one where I'm just like, I feel like CEH has this one game every year where we're all like, yep, he's back. And you realize it's like, oh, he had 3 receptions and 2 of them were touchdowns. And the yardage just wasn't, it was ugly yardage. It was like 40 rushing yards and 30 receiving yards.
Only 7 rush attempts.
Yeah. Like, I'm not, again, I don't think you struck gold with CEH. I think there's, if we get more receiving touchdowns out of Clyde, if this becomes a regular thing, then we could talk about it. But again, this is like a Mike Thomas. I'm not expecting 2 touchdowns from CEH every single week.
Agreed.
Dontrell Hillier, 21.9 fantasy points. Don't count on that. Excuse me. Like, I don't even think he's a waiver wire pickup this week.
What?
Moving on. A.J. Dillon, Ty started the week, 20.1 fantasy points. He had himself a nice little day against Minnesota. And hey, my start of the week, Antonio Gibson with 20 fantasy points, wraps out the top 10. Let's move on. Tyler, you and I nailed running back starts this week. Let's talk about some wide receiver booms from this week. And I think we have to start with the man himself, Justin Jefferson. No matter how obvious it's, yeah, right. No kidding. Yeah, your start of the week. Justin Jefferson, nearly 40 fantasy points on Lutu, wide receiver 1 finish, barring Monday Night Football. But I really don't think DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Cortland Sutton, or Jerry Jeudy are going to top this performance. 9 receptions on 11 targets for 184 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm just going to start by saying this. He is this year's Cooper Kupp. I think he made that very clear. The way he was being used in this offense, the way you saw him absolutely tear holes in this Green Bay zone defense. Remind me who Green Bay's defensive coordinator is. I meant to put this note down for the podcast.
Joe Barry.
Thank you, Joe Barry. He came in. They were talking about it on the broadcast, right? Like Joe Barry is running all zone scheme on defense. And you want to know who absolutely tore up zone schemes last year? Cooper Kupp. To this extent, to games like this. And Kevin O'Connell had him moving all over the formation. Ty, do you remember what the numbers were? Like the percent of snaps that he had, that Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson were in motion on, or like the total snaps? That's what
it was like 190 to 50 or something like that last season.
I think
it was almost like exactly like 100 snaps more.
Yeah,
Cooper Kupp was in motion compared to Jefferson.
And then Justin Jefferson was all over the field yesterday in terms of his position and where he was lining up. Right, like this is it. Everyone was trying to tell you this year's Cooper Kupp is somebody. Juju Smith-Schuster, Cortland Sutton, I don't know. And granted, I'm not trying to overreact week 1, but this was expected. This was expected, was it not?
Yeah.
I think everyone expected it except for Green Bay.
Yeah, they look shocked every play.
Zone defense, wide. There was no coverage on Jefferson on half of these plays.
No, he had like 15 yards of separation on like 4 catches. It was just like, who are you guarding?
Yeah, and they showed the replays, and it's just across the middle of the field. Nobody.
When Kevin Burkhardt's most well-known line is wide open, but he changes it to, how is he this wide open again? He's just speaking for the fans watching the game, because all of us were like, there's no one within 15 yards of the guy. And now because of that play, I didn't notice this. Did you guys see like Adrian Amos just get sniped from like the top of the stadium? Mm-hmm. Like Jefferson hit a step inside and went back outside, and Amos just slipped and fell. And it was
they couldn't slow him down at all.
No, he's a beast, and he's wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Hot take? No, it is not a hot take. It is just the facts. Move on.
He is on pace for 3,000 yards this season. That's all I'm saying.
There it is. I was going to add something else, but we're going to move on to the second highlight of the week. Michael Pittman Jr. Oh, man, did he have himself a nice day. I mean, we could talk about Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase. They were all expected to finish top 5. Michael Pittman, though, 27.1 fantasy points as a Monday Night Football wide receiver 5 on the week. 9 receptions on 13 targets for 121 yards and a tutty. I mean, I believe I had Michael Pittman as my wide receiver 10 going into this week. I'm thrilled with the top 5 performance. If I drafted him, I am thrilled to see this in his first game with Matt Ryan.
There are some people that were very much out on Michael Pittman. And it's just nice to see, because I would say we're a pro Michael Pittman, group.
A pro Michael Pittman bunch, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And it's nice to see. I'll keep it at that.
Cameron, what was the stat you threw out on the Fella Flag Plants episode with Matt Ryan and his number 1 targets in terms of how many targets they see every week?
They average 161 targets a season.
And Michael Pittman is already on pace to see exactly that. It actually is on pace to see more than that. 13 times 17 is more than 161 if I do my math correctly. So, this was encouraging. And granted, this game went into overtime, so sure, you get a little bit of extra fluff there. But, even by the end of regulation, Michael Pittman still had 10 targets already, right? That is exactly what I want to see. I want to see good volume. I want to see Matt Ryan go into his number 1 option, and I want to see him catching touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Checked all the boxes. Granted, he's facing Derek Stingley, rookie cornerback out of LSU, right? First game in the NFL against fairly tough matchup. I love this for Michael Pittman, though. As a guy who waited to take him in the 3rd round, I would go frequently double running backs in the back half of the 1st round, and Michael Pittman would follow me in the back, and I'd stack up on wide receivers then for the next 4 rounds. And getting Michael Pittman in that stretch, I am very pleased to see this. And I'm sure if you have him as your wide receiver 2 on teams, you are absolutely thrilled right now.
Definitely.
Couple honorable mentions we want to throw out there. I already brought up Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase. All had 29 plus fantasy points, AJ Brown in his debut with the Philadelphia Eagles, a nice 25.5 fantasy points on no touchdowns. No touchdowns for that either. Could have had an even better day.
Yeah, but he dominated the target.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't even. That's
close.
the thing about Jalen Hurts that could benefit AJ Brown is Jalen Hurts is a one read guy, and if AJ Brown is going to be the hot read every single time, AJ Brown can see a lot of targets this season.
I was shocked because Devonta Smith got goose egged.
Four targets. That was it.
And that was it. And Dallas Goedert, like an okay week. I believe he was a tight end 11 on the week with like 8 fantasy points. AJ Brown was a guy. Granted, again, when they get in close, it's all Jalen Hurts. It's the 2 running backs, right? And 2 running backs, whichever 2 they choose on a given week. This week it was Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell. But like, I don't know if the touchdown volume will be there for AJ Brown this year, but I'll tell you what, if the target share is going to be this much in his favor, you can expect big things from AJ Brown this year. That was surprising. Michael Thomas then 22.7 fantasy points, and I feel we just have to mention these last 2 to round out the top 10. Devin Duvernay, 2 touchdowns on Sunday, 21.4 fantasy points, and yes, we all knew Robbie Anderson was going to be the leading Carolina Panthers wide receiver in Week 1. If you didn't listen to us on that, you're silly. And if you missed it, it's because you never heard it from us. 21.2 fantasy points for Robbie. More yards than McCaffrey and DJ Moore, who we'll also touch on a little bit later. So that wraps out wide receiver booms for the week. Let's talk some quarterbacks now. And hey, we brought his name up earlier. Apparently, Patrick Mahomes sustained his wrist injury after his first of 5 touchdowns on Sunday. Quarterback won 34.9 fantasy points on the week. He was 30 of 39, 360 yards and 5 tutties. How much of this, this might be worthy of maybe not overreaction. This Cardinals defense is just atrocious. Tyler, I said this to you on Sunday. They might actually be the worst team in the NFL this year. Right, I know Chicago played in a tsunami and they won, and people don't want to say they're probably the worst team. They probably are, but this Cardinals team left so much to be desired on Sunday. So how much of Mahomes' success was just opponent, or how much of it is actually maybe this offense without Tyreek Hill is arguably more versatile.
I think it's a mix of both, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Sure, because
the Chiefs were kind of struggling throughout last year. We all noticed it, and who knows if there were some undisclosed injuries or, whatever the case was. But it just seemed like teams were starting to figure out the Chiefs a little bit, right? You couldn't play zone against them. You had to man up, which was scary because you have speed, right? And then a guy over the middle and Kelsey. But teams were figuring out a way to beat the Chiefs. And now in some ways, losing Tyreek makes it so much tougher to cover the Chiefs because Mahomes is good enough to spread the ball around, and they've got pieces. They may not be the best pieces, but you've got speed in McCole Hardman and MVS. You've got an absolute gadget with Sky Moore. Juju is a great possession wide receiver, and you've got Travis Kelce then too still, right? It just makes it so much more difficult to cover the Chiefs. Because now it's not just 2 guys. It could be 7 guys. And I think, what was the stat that I said on Sunday? 8 different receivers were targeted at a certain
9.
point.
I believe 9. It was 9.
It's tough to cover that kind of offense. You mix that in then with the Arizona defense that is just kind of
bad. They're so bad.
It is such an afterthought of the team, right? We've got Kyler Murray and we paid him this big extension. Let's go get Hollywood Brown. Let's get this kind of all-star stud offense a little bit, right?
But they don't have the offensive line for that.
They have no offensive line. Their defense is absolute garbage. I feel like it was just kind of the perfect storm in some ways that 44 points was the absolute right amount of points for Kansas City to score just with the matchup and the roster and depth that they have.
Yeah, I can't get over how bad the Cardinals looked on Sunday. I just can't. I can't. I was thinking a big day for Hollywood Brown. I was thinking Kyler would at least, they would mix it up instead of trying to beat the Chiefs over the top. I thought they'd try and go like literally what the Chiefs did. It was all right across the middle of the field, right? Just keep it short, keep Hollywood in the slot, right across the middle of the field, give Hollywood space to run, and they just did not adapt at all. It was just like, Kyler, do it all for us. And some Cardinals had some fine weeks. Zach Ertz, I believe, was a top 10 tight end. Hollywood was a top 25 wide receiver. Kyler Murray is a top 10 quarter. But, like, nothing about that offense was like, I was thrilled to start these guys this week. And if you started Patrick Mahomes, you were thrilled this week. You were thrilled. Yep. We'll talk about the other boom player on the Chiefs here in a bit. We expected Josh Allen to do his thing against the Rams, maybe not for 33 fantasy points, but we were all reminded Josh Allen is arguably quarterback 1 this year. But how about the quarterback 3 on the week? How about the man, probably the man who's fallen from, like, is it fair to say Carson Wentz has, like, fallen from grace at, like, the most brutal rate in the NFL since his MVP season in Philly in 2017? I mean, and I say MVP season, he didn't win MVP, but what would have been an MVP season in 2017?
Can we make an argument that it's been relatively, like, I shouldn't say unkind, but unfair to him? Like, I know he wasn't he wasn't the greatest quarterback in Indy last year, but really, was it really that bad? That
his lows outweighed his highs by quite a bit last year.
If he makes the playoffs, it's a different conversation. The fact that he lost to Jacksonville in a must-win game, that's what did it. We're having a very different conversation. Yes, we have a very different conversation if that was different. But I agree. Stat-wise, he was good last year.
He was.
27 touchdowns, only 7 picks. Threw for nearly 3,700 yards, I want to say. But looking at him against Jacksonville, I mean, he's the same quarterback, right? He's gonna make some good throws. I mean, his natural ability is really good, but he's also gonna make some stupid throws, right? He almost lost the game for him because he threw 2 bad picks. And so I think when you get good matchups for Carson Wentz, he can be a great start. Jacksonville's a very favorable matchup. I'm not going, they're playing Jacksonville, I want to sit everybody, right? I'm looking at Jacksonville like, they're probably going to put up points right now. And so I think he can, he's definitely a streamable quarterback. This doesn't make me go, he's top 12. No, I'm starting him. But you get a good match with Carson Wentz, definitely throw him in.
I think that's 100%. I think it's 100% it, right? 27 to 41, not a great completion percentage, but a solid day, 313 yards, 4 tutties. It's a great day for Wentz, right? It's a great day. Obviously, if you're talking 1 less touchdown, he's still a top 10 quarterback on the week, but not quarterback 3 on the week. And frankly, like, Carson Wentz wasn't in anybody's starting lineups because this isn't what we expect from Wentz. But Cameron, I think you nailed it from the sense of, like, Carson Wentz is still talented. He's got great natural talent, but there are just some boneheaded things he does that will come up in future weeks, right? Like, I feel like it's just inevitable, but quarterback 3, his first week with the Commanders. Hey, you know what? In a favorable matchup with the Jags, I will take that. I would be eyeing Carson Wentz as a streaming option in good matchups going forward. I think that's 100% what you take away from this. Jalen Hurts, just some honorable mentions here. Jalen Hurts, you expected 24.7. Justin Herbert, 23.3. How about Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow still cracked the top 10. 22.2 fantasy points with 4 picks. That blew my mind. He was negative for about the entire first quarter, and then he just decided, hey, wait, I like Jamar Chase a lot. I like Jamar Chase a lot too. But 22.2 fantasy points, bounces back. Then the last 2 I think we need to shout out. Jameis Winston, 21.7 fantasy points this week, and Marcus Mariota cracks the top 10 quarterbacks, 20 fantasy points. Nothing stellar, but I'll tell you what, Mariota's got that rushing upside. One of Ty's favorite late round sleeper quarterbacks this year.
And it was impressive because the Saints aren't a bad defense, right? The Saints are supposed to have a top 5 defense this year. So Mariota put up that kind of stats is pretty good.
100% agree.
I mean, when did I make that Marcus Mariota video? Like way back in March.
Yeah, I was like May. I was right around draft time.
It was like way too early for a take like that, but
sometimes you just have to get way out ahead of it where no one remembers, and then you can just remind people gently.
Hey, I said this way before it could ever be relevant.
Don't look at these 7 other takes I made at that time, but this
one. No. Just that one in particular. Please and thank you.
I nailed that one.
Let's wrap out the booms with tight ends on the week. There's not a lot to talk about for these tight ends. Travis Kelce is the guy you want. And if you drafted him this year, you're thrilled. 8 receptions on 9 targets for 121 yards and a touchdown. I don't think we need to say much more than that. Travis Kelce is probably going to be the tight end one more times than he isn't going to be this year, and probably a lot more times than not this year. Can we move on? Because there are just 2 other guys here that are worth mentioning that I don't even know how much discussion we want. Like I was looking at their lines and I just want to puke looking at them.
Yeah.
OJ Howard, as of right now, before Monday Night Football, is a tight end 2 on the week of the Houston Texans. 17.8 fantasy points. You ready for this line? 2 receptions on 2 targets for 38 yards and 2 touchdowns. Give me hashtag Mike Evans week. It's like a quintessential Mike Evans. He learned that from him in Tampa. Are you even considering picking up OJ Howard?
No.
I feel because this is I mentioned this. I believe I mentioned this on the podcast on Saturday. Ty, was when you and I were doing the starts and sits and we brought up Austin Hooper, and I said, watch for the guy who has that week at the tight end position. The guy who has himself, a top 10 week, like a really good week. That's like, okay, maybe he's the breakout tight end guy this year. I'll tell you what, it's not OJ Howard. not with that kind of a line. It's not OJ Howard. I hate to break it to you. But moving on. We don't need to talk about OJ Howard more. I feel gross just talking about him that much. Taysom Hill, tight end 3 on the week.
Huge receiving day.
Yeah, you ready for this line? One reception on 1 target for 2 yards. But he had 4 rushing attempts for 81 yards and a touchdown. You're not picking up Taysom Hill, are you?
I think that 20 yards per carry is pretty reliable, so I might take a stab at it. But yeah, no, I'm not.
If you thought 10 yards a carry from DeAndre Swift was reliable, let me introduce you to Taysom Hill. No, I'm not touching Taysom Hill either. He is also not the guy that I would have been referring to who had himself a week 1. Honorable mentions here: Gerald Everett with 14.4 fantasy points, elevated by a touchdown. Look, he had himself a nice little day, though.
He's a guy you might want to look at.
Yeah, I think
just
so.
Being on the Chargers.
Well, with Keenan Allen out for at least a week, Gerald Everett is a nice little pickup for sure.
Yep, definitely agree. Dalton Schultz was the tight end 5. And here you go, Pat Freiermuth. I think this is the name I wanted to pick out and say, like, hey, he had himself a nice little week here with poor quarterback play in a game that did go to overtime. But and frankly, they were up on the Bengals too. So that's the other thing we're taking into account here is, like, even with the lead, Pat Freiermuth was still 12.5 fantasy points, 10-6 on the week. My tight end start of the week. You're welcome. I just have to shout myself out there. I think if you have Pat on your team, I feel a little bit better about Pat. I don't think he's going to give you a ton of boom weeks like this, but I do think he's capable of giving you, plenty of 10+ point fantasy weeks. I think more times than not this year.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn the corner here. We got 17 minutes to cruise through some week 1 bust players. We're going to fly through some of these, and we're not going to spend too much time sitting in
misery.
In misery, yes. We're going to start with running backs again, and I think it's only right to start with Alvin Kamara. 7.6 fantasy points in one of the most favorable matchups he's going to get all year. Granted, I feel like the Falcons always play divisional opponents like really tough, and they just decide to flop against everybody else. I don't know why that is, but Alvin Kamara only had 9 rushing attempts. I mean, look, the Saints got down early. They got down 20-7 at halftime, so they're not going to abandon. They're going to abandon the run in that case. Only 9 attempts, only 5 such games with that few attempts in the last 3 seasons. And when you play 16, 32, 40, nearly 50 games, and you only have 5 games with 9 or fewer carries, I'm not worried about Alvin Kamara. But he did not do me any favors this week. I'll tell you that right now. In a matchup I expected him to just absolutely dominate. Yeah. Neither of you are worried about Alvin Kamara?
No, not at all.
I think it'll be kind of like it's a process to figure out the groove of your offense. And when you've got guys like Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, it's going to take a couple weeks, right? Because you're gonna try out a guy in this role, that role, and until you find, which role works best for the team, you're going to have weeks like this. So I think this is just part of what's to come, and I think we all still expect Kamara to be top 5, top 10 consistent finishes week to week.
And he had 4 targets still on the week, right? Like it's not like he wasn't involved in the passing game. He just couldn't rack up any yardage. I believe he had 4 receptions for 7 yards or something like that. He'll be fine. Yes. I'm not worried about Alvin Kamara. Other running back worth mentioning that fell in way below expectations. Derrick Henry, running back 38 on the week so far, 8.2 fantasy points. Again, not really worried about it when Dontrell Hilliard scores 2 touchdowns from in close, 2 receiving touchdowns from in close. I think, look, Derrick Henry only scored 10 fantasy points in week 1 last year against the Cardinals, and then he 48 in week 2. I know what Derrick Henry can do on a week-to-week basis. Was there anything from this game that concerned you about Derrick Henry? I mean, he had 21 rushing attempts. Maybe like the receiving volume isn't where you would like it to be, and if he's only going to average 3.9 yards per carry, I mean, you're kind of hoping for 25-plus carries.
Yeah, I think we all kind of assumed the efficiency had to come down a little bit, being older, coming off the foot injury. So, he's going to be a volume play. Like you said, he scores a touchdown here. He's at 15 points. You're not too worried. That's what it is. He needs a touchdown every week. He's got that Nick Chubb-esque play style. But, he gets you 80 yards and a touchdown and 2 catches for 20 yards, and you're feeling pretty good because he's about 20 points a game. So that's kind of where you drafted him for. You got to know that that's a risk going in. So I'm not worried about Henry at all.
It was such a weird game that Tennessee played.
Yeah.
Looking back on the game, 9 different players had a reception in that game. Yeah. There is no reason why 9 different players need a reception when you've got guys like Austin Hooper, Robert Woods, and Derrick Henry. There's no need for it. Yeah. So I'm not worried. I just think first game back. He came back in the playoffs, so you can't really say it's his first real game back, but it's his.
It's his first real game back. Coming off of a foot injury, same season. Like I would still consider this his first, not his first game, but like maybe one that I'm like paying a lot more attention to versus the playoff game where I'm like, I'm just not expecting much from you.
Right. So I'm not worried. I think the Titans will figure out, oh, wait a second. You're Derrick Henry. Mm-hmm. Jeff Swaim, who are you? Get back and just block for us, would you? That'll happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Don't panic on Derrick Henry. Don't sell him. Granted, he was a guy who I really wasn't interested in too many drafts this year, but I think if you still have Derrick Henry, you'll be just fine. Honorable mentions here. Austin Eckler was running back 26 on the week with 11.2 fantasy points, only had 18 total touches. And this Chargers offense was just bizarre this week. 7 different players with, I'll save that stat for later. Just a bizarre week. Don't panic on Austin Eckler. Aaron Jones was running back 29 on the week with 10.6 fantasy points. Still averaged 9 yards a touch. Not worried about Aaron Jones whatsoever. A.J. Dillon just happened to get the rushing touchdown. And frankly, this Packers offense just looked absolutely abysmal. There's no other way of putting it. I don't even think it was like the Vikings defense as much as it was this Packers offense with all their youth and no Devontae Adams. I don't know if we expected it to be this bad, but I certainly didn't expect it to be good. I didn't expect it to be like a work of art or anything like that. Like Aaron Rodgers is great, but he's not 2 rookie wide receivers in my starting lineup or in my starting wide receiver core. Great. Ezekiel Elliott, 5.9 fantasy points, running back 47 on the week. I wasn't expecting big things from Zeke to begin with against a stout Tampa run defense. I don't know how much more we really need to say on that. I'm not too worried about Zeke. I wasn't excited to start him in my lineups anyways.
He looked better than he did at the end of last season.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just watching him run, he looked better. Obviously, you have to tamper expectations with Dak out a couple weeks going forward, but it's not like we're abandoning Zeke. Tony Pollard's not taking over this offense. You don't got to worry about Zeke.
There was that stupid tweet that I saw earlier today of like
he only had 1 less touch. Pollard only had 1 less touch than Zeke, did he not?
it was something like that, or it was like Pollard played 2 less snaps than Zeke. They were on the field a lot together.
They were, yeah.
They needed both of them on the field because it was Dalton Schultz, CeeDee Lamb, and quite literally a bunch of nobodies. Like they needed Zeke and Pollard on the field. So don't overread it. Don't try to read between the lines on it. Zeke will get his. Who do they have next week? Do we know?
Oh, I don't have it off the top of my head.
They have the Bengals.
I was gonna say it was another matchup I wasn't too thrilled about.
At home though.
Zeke will get his. Again, everyone's gonna look at what Pollard just did.
It's all good. It's gonna be about Pollard from here on out. It's gonna be about Pollard.
Forever. Yeah, it forever will be. But Zeke will still find the field.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I am not overly concerned. Let's move on to the wide receiver bus here, and let's talk about another Cowboy. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 72 on the week, with only 4.9 fantasy points. This infuriates me. This stat line everything about it infuriates me. 2 catches. You see that and you're like, oh, ish. What? Why are the Cowboys not throwing to him more? Oh, but they did. 11 targets. 11. I'm at a loss for words. Like when you force feed CeeDee Lamb that much and he can't make it, are you worried about CeeDee Lamb at this point? If we're gonna not overreact, or if we're gonna overreact on a player and justify the overreaction, I'm not. You're not hearing me say this as a CeeDee Lamb manager in our dynasty league, but I'm borderline panic button on CeeDee Lamb. Granted, it's a dynasty league, so I'm going to hold on to him. I'm not going to trade him for chump change, but this Cameron's eyeing me up ready to offer me Cordero Patterson for CeeDee Lamb straight up. How worried are you for CeeDee Lamb? On a scale of 1 to 10.
My expectations for CD have changed from a top 10 wide receiver to a top 20 wide receiver.
Yes.
That's where I'm at with CeeDee Lamb.
So a 6.
Yeah.
Because you've actually altered your expectations.
Yes.
I'm concerned now how this offense is. I guess it started last year when you have Kellen Moore as your offensive coordinator. It just does not give you the security that you hope for with a fantasy asset like CeeDee Lamb. And I know that, if you look at the game last night, 11 targets is probably where it should be for CeeDee Lamb. He had a drop or 2, but for the rest of the game, there was at least two Bucks players by CeeDee Lamb at all times. All times. So is every defense going to do that? It's hard to tell.
Maybe.
They might, just because it's Cooper Rush now at quarterback. They might. Kellen Moore has to get kind of creative, and he has to find ways to get CeeDee Lamb in space and getting him in motion before the snap, because that's the only way CeeDee Lamb is really going to see a top 10 type production stat line for the foreseeable future, just because the state of affairs in Dallas is just not appealing at all.
This is a super obscure question, and I don't expect either of you to have an answer for it. Do you know if the Rams had an offensive advisor in 2021? Excuse me, I stumbled through that. Because Kevin O'Connell, Kevin O'Connell can stay in Minnesota after I saw what for Justin Jefferson yesterday. But if you're the Cowboys and you have CeeDee Lamb, who is uber athletic, let's not pretend CeeDee Lamb is a slouch. CeeDee Lamb, first round draft pick, high draft capital, one of the most touted wide receivers coming out from Oklahoma in the 19 draft class. Thank you. I want to use him. I'm not saying every wide receiver should be used like Cooper Kupp, but with CeeDee Lamb, he's got that build, he's got that athleticism. I want CeeDee Lamb all over my formation if he's going to be my focal point.
Yeah.
You go back to when he played at Oklahoma, that was his role.
Yes.
That was his role. And you can take that as a anti-Kellen Moore comment. But here's the other thing. I mean, I don't want to go back to Zeke and get us off of CeeDee Lamb. But when Zeke is rushing for an average of like 69.5 yards per game the last 3 years under Kellen Moore, after averaging like 100 yards a game, Kellen Moore is just not Kellen Moore. He's not him. Okay,
He's more Cliff Kingsbury than Sean McVay.
Thank you. It's about time someone said it and put that into the universe because it needed to be said.
Let's move on to second wide receiver bust of the week. One of our favorite players, Mike Williams, wide receiver 94 on the week with only 3 fantasy points. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I'm going to read that stat from earlier, and that's going to exactly explain why we're not worried. 9 players caught a pass on Sunday for the Chargers. 7 of those 9 had 4 targets, and Mike Will was one of them. Justin Herbert isn't going to spread the ball out like this every single week. I don't think this Chargers offense wants to run like that. I'm not worried. I mean, you knew drafting Mike Williams there were going to be games like this, but frankly, I know there's going to be more big games than there are games like this for Mike Williams. And that's just the bottom line.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, excellent. Let's move on. Honorable mentions. DJ Moore only had 8 fantasy points, wide receiver 55 on the week. I'm not panicking on DJ Moore, but I also knew Baker wasn't going to elevate him, and I feel pretty good about that thus far. You're going to get 12, 13, 14-point weeks from DJ Moore. I don't think you can expect uber 20-plus point fantasy point weeks with Baker Mayfield at quarterback for DJ Moore.
Yeah, sorry, Ty.
Yeah, I was literally going to say it's the Denzel Ward effect. Like Denzel Ward has played with Baker Mayfield, knows his tendencies. He's going to shut down DJ Moore. That's why Robbie Anderson was so utilized.
Good. Actually, for once.
Would agree. I was just going to say DJ Moore until Dak gets back, I view in the same light as CeeDee Lamb right now.
Oh,
I don't mind that. Adam Thielen, just have to throw him out there, not to shame Tyler for his start of the week, but also this was a game that Justin Jefferson just dominated. I mean, that's it for Adam Thielen. 6.6 fantasy points, wide receiver 62.
Look for him next week.
I like that call. Amari Cooper had to throw his name on the list just because I think wide receiver 76 was extreme. Only 4.7 fantasy points. 83% snap share, though. That's pretty wild. He was on the field a lot. Allen Robinson as well, wide receiver 103 for 2.2. Tyler and I already talked about this. That's the reason why we didn't talk about him again. Darnell Mooney only had 1.8 fantasy points for wide receiver 106. They're playing literally in a lake. Like they just brought in Lake Superior and decided this is our terrain for today. No production there for Mooney. And then Cameron, did you have Devonta Smith on here as I'm looking at it?
Yes, I did.
0 fantasy points. I mean, I wasn't buying Devonta Smith this week anyways, but you do you. Let's cruise through these last busts at both quarterback and tight end here. Aaron Rodgers, yikes, 4.7 fantasy points on the week, quarterback 30. This Packers offense just looked so bad. I don't even think it was here's the thing though. Christian Watson catches that first pass of the game. And we're talking about a completely different game. Because I think you get Rodgers in his groove, and it's just instant double middle fingers to everybody. See, I told you. I don't know what to I don't know what to make. The Packers just look so bad. And it all started with that one drop, and it was just this is going to be a bad game. Aaron Rodgers is going to be yelling a lot in this game, and there were plenty of cuts to the sideline of him just stone cold, no pun intended there, stone face, just absolutely pissed off, which I feel like might be a trend for this year.
Yeah, it made me happy to watch.
As Vikings fans, we were very pleased. Dak Prescott obviously injured during the game, only 5.5 fantasy points, quarterback 29 on the week. I mean, even before the injury, it was just this offense was not one to watch. This game was kind of it
was a bad game.
It was a pretty, I don't want to call it a snooze fest. It wasn't that bad, but not a lot of fireworks. Not a lot of fireworks. Matthew Stafford, Tyler and I talked about him a little bit, only 10.8 fantasy points, quarterback 27 on the week. Trey Lance, again, don't panic on him, only 11 fantasy points for the quarterback 25. And hey, the other quarterback on Sunday Night Football, Tom Brady, 11.4 fantasy points, quarterback 24. Not really worried about any of those guys.
No.
Tight end bust of the week, Kyle Pitts. Yikes, 3.9 fantasy points. I thought he had tight end 1 upside this year. Hey, maybe that's what it looks like to be in a bad offense.
Yeah,
that actually scored a lot of points. So this is like almost like extra concerning for me. Unless you know what the Saints did. I haven't gone back and watched Falcon Saints film. I mostly just looked and saw the Saints got behind early, and so of course they're going to pass the ball a ton. I mean, Saints secondary is no joke. This is a really good defense, and of course they're going to lock in on Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Patterson had 22 rush attempts this game. They're not going to run the ball that much in Atlanta, I don't think. They never did last season with Cordero. So I wouldn't, that's part of it too. You're just not throwing the ball as much. And like you said, Saints got a good secondary. They're gonna try and take Kyle Pitts out of the game. You're gonna try and make Drake London, who's coming off the injury report, beat you in his first NFL game. That would be your game plan against them. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses. But like you said, he's not beating out Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce for the wide receiver or tight end 1 this season. It just can't happen on this offense.
Anything you want to add, Tyler?
Nope, nailed it.
Dawson Knox, the other one. I feel like people would just be disappointed that the fact he only put up 1.5 fantasy points. But frankly, you're getting 3 fantasy points or you're getting 20 fantasy points from Dawson Knox. He is like the Mike Will of tight ends at a much more inconsistent rate, if you ask me. Tight end 46 on the week. If you drafted him, you're starting him because, frankly, you probably waited on Dawson Knox. You don't have very many options. I'm more willing to stream someone over Dawson Knox most weeks than I am not. I think that's where I'm at with. That's where I've always been with Dawson Knox. He's never been a starting tight end for me, but he's still a guy where it's like, I don't know, he could catch a touchdown and have 50 yards this week, and all of a sudden, he's got 18 fantasy points in before I even realize it, right? So, I think a guy you just kind of have to keep starting, and you just hope it's not 1.5 the week you start him. Some honorable mentions here. I expected a better week from David Njoku. Just me personally, 1.7 fantasy points, a tight end 40 on the week. I mean, you're not starting him most weeks, but he was a guy who I was really considering this week against Carolina and like DFS lineups. And then Hunter Henry, 4 fantasy points as a tight end 30 this week. That Pats offense just looked miserable against Miami. You can talk about them later this week if you're doing a preview, but I'm a little bit concerned. Mark Andrews was a candidate for this list, only 10 fantasy points. I feel like people were just vastly disappointed by him, but he was still tight end 10 on the week.
Yeah. Devin Duvernay is not going to have 2 receiving touchdowns every week. So
no, you give one of those to Mark Andrews and you're not worried about it, right? You give one of those to Mark Andrews and he's literally the tight end 2 on the week. I'm pretty sure. Who was our tight end 3? Excuse me. He'd be the tight end 3 if you give one of those to Mark. No, he would be the tight end 2 on the week, right? So just one of those where not worried about it for Mark Andrews whatsoever. Before we wrap out the podcast, realize our next episode probably isn't going to come out until after waivers clear. So here's what I want to do. I want to add a quick segment at the end here. Give the people one player you're targeting on the waiver wire this week, because I'll be getting this on Tuesday. Waivers are going to run tonight for you all. Give one player people should be picking up on waiver wires this week quick.
For me, it's got to be Jeff Wilson. You got to take the shot that he's the guy in San Francisco with Elijah Mitchell missing 2 months.
I would agree.
I want to say Josh Palmer, but I feel like he was taken in a lot of drafts. So
I mean, my guy might have been taken in a lot of drafts. He was going around the same range as Josh Palmer. But I mean, you can look at roster percentage and see how many leagues they're in. Go ahead though.
I'll say Josh Palmer. I mean, I think it was Matthew Berry that said that in the games without Keenan Allen last year, he averaged 16 fantasy points.
Yep.
So give me that against a Kansas City defense that has struggled against Chargers offenses in the past. Josh Palmer is your ad.
Yeah, there's a couple different guys that I'm looking at, specifically at the wide receiver position. I'm looking at Jahan Dotson. I mean, granted, I know he only had 3 receptions and 2 of them were touchdowns. There's still intrigue there. I'm looking at Curtis Samuel. He was plenty involved this past week. Tyler, I agree. I'm looking at Josh Palmer before I'm looking at DeAndre Carter. just a lot of weird names. Maybe Devin Duvernay is the other guy I'm looking at, just because he did have 2 touchdowns and if Lamar is looking his way. But I mean, again, only 4 receptions, right? So a lot of these guys are picking up on the waiver wire aren't high volume guys. Maybe you're looking at Robbie Anderson, 5 receptions, right? I would rather target the guys who have high reception total. So I'm looking at like a Robbie Anderson. I'm looking at a Curtis Samuel.
I'm going to change mine.
Go ahead.
I'm going to go Sterling Shepard.
Ooh,
with how the Giants have been treating Kadarius Toney so far this season, and after 1 week, that's what I mean. They clearly are not ready for Kadarius Toney to see the field quite yet, and Sterling Shepard is one of Daniel Jones's favorite targets. We've seen that last year and now this year too. Granted, it was 2 catches and 71 yards, but still. Yeah, I would go look at Sterling Shepard if you're looking for just kind of like a depth wide receiver piece.
Yep.
My final answer is Curtis Samuel. 8 receptions. I'm looking at Curtis Samuel all the way. He could have had 21 fantasy points if he didn't lose a fumble this week. And they're using him in the rushing game. 4 rushes for 17 yards too. Yeah, go out and get yourself some Curtis Samuel this week. He is absolutely one of my favorite waiver wire pickups for the week. And after all the other plethora of wide receivers I gave you as well. So anything we want to add before we sign off here, fellas?
All the running backs and wide receivers that we talked about as busts, except for Amari Cooper for me, are buy low candidates moving forward this week.
I like that. Anything from you, Todd?
No, I share that same sentiment.
Make it 3. Keep on keeping on, people. We're 3 Stooges being dudes. We're the Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. We will see you all later this week. Deuces.
Deuces.